I'm definitely in the group that feels like the last good King adaptation we got. I mean, Dr. Sleep, I did listen to your guys' episode a couple of years ago, and I know you had, at the time, I don't know if you've changed your opinions, but you guys don't love that movie. But I think Dr. Sleep was a fantastic adaptation, so I feel like that was the last good one. Although I also know you guys had issues with this too, but I also kind of liked the 2020 adaptation of The Stand. But still, even The Stand was like almost 5 years ago now. So the more recent ones, like Firestarter and Mr. Harrigan's Phone and
Salem's Lot,
Salem's
unfortunately.
Lot, yeah, like they've all kind of sucked. So I do think this is the best one we've had in like 5 or 6 years.
Welcome, friends, to episode 341 of the Ink to Film podcast, where we read the book and then see the movie. I'm writer Luke Elliott.
And I'm filmmaker James Bailey.
And this week we discuss Stephen King's 1980 short story and Osgood Perkins' 2025 film, The Monkey. So joining us back at the bottom of the well this week is friend of the show, Laura from the Why the Book Wins YouTube channel. Thanks for coming back, Laura.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me back on. And I specifically requested to be on this episode, so thanks for being cool with that.
Yeah, you said that you had some more thoughts, because you've covered this on your channel. I will admit I didn't watch your episode because I wanted to kind of stay fresh for this, but you had covered this already, and you said, I have more thoughts that I want to talk about, so hopefully this will be an avenue for that for you.
That's the problem, I guess, because I'm always like, oh, I got to get it out as soon as possible. But then after a few days, I'm like, oh man, there's so much more I wish I would have said. So yeah.
Never enough time. I mean, our episodes obviously can go pretty long, so that's, our audience knows that there's never enough time.
Yeah, we tend to be long-winded, I guess. But Stephen King, this is our first Stephen King project of the year. He is a frequent author that we cover on the show, going all the way back to our first ever coverage, which we did for It. And I was counting through our projects, and I have a quick list here I'm going to run through. So we started off with It. We've done The Shining, Dr. Sleep, Pet Sematary, The Shawshank Redemption, The Stand, Misery, Stand By Me, Carrie, Children of the Corn, and now The Monkey, which makes 11 projects in total, which is definitely the most we've had from any one author. I know that's someone that you also talk a lot about on your show.
Yeah, I've never counted. That would be interesting, though. But especially with his novellas, it's easy to get through those. But
yeah,
I mean, he also
we did Secret Window on your show.
Yeah, that was our first collaboration. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But yeah, this year already, I've done The Stand and now this. So this is my second of the year. He's always someone I cover a handful of times, just like you guys.
People are passionate about Stephen King. Love him or hate him. Some of his projects people love, some they don't. And then the adaptations that spin out of that, obviously. So many opinions on so many different things. And now we're getting to this Osgood Perkins adaptation of a short story I had never read before with The Monkey.
Right. Yeah, same. I'd never read it before. Stephen King is an industry in and of himself. He's one of the most famous authors alive. He is synonymous with the horror genre, especially in like horror novels. So many influences out there you'll see, or people influenced by him, rather. He's someone that I think deserves a lot of attention. We try and play it straight with him. I would say we're fans, but we'll find things that we'll nitpick here and there. He's a writer that I continue to be impressed with, just how stark and sort of observant he is about the human condition and his writing. And whenever I read his stuff, I feel like I'm in these good hands as far as like someone who knows how to tell a good story and just knows how to really like cut to the core of a character. He's so good at all these things. I don't know. I wanted to know, Laura, like, how do you feel about King as an author and coming back to him so frequently? Where does he sort of sit in the pantheon for you and the authors you cover?
Oh, I mean, he's definitely a favorite. His books are easy to read, right? And he has great character development. And for me, like a character-driven story, those are my favorite. So of course he still has interesting plots, but I definitely prefer his character-heavy stories. The Shining, I feel like, is very character-heavy. Misery is probably my favorite. But yeah, some people act like maybe his stories aren't that deep, but I feel like some of them really are. Like The Stand I just read, and I feel like that had a lot going on. And again, Misery, like I feel like that's a really powerful novel. And so sometimes people don't give him credit for being more than just like, oh, an entertaining, fun horror author. But I don't know if he's my all-time favorite, but I don't think I have an all-time favorite anyway. There's just too many to choose. Sometimes I feel like you could just have a YouTube channel dedicated to Stephen King and his adaptations.
You totally could. I'm sure they're out there.
Yeah, and I don't think I would get tired of reading him either. So I feel like I would be fine having a channel like that. But anyway, yeah, so he's definitely a favorite. And even in The Monkey, this is the shortest, I think, of his I've ever read. And yet I was impressed at like how well, specifically how, like we got to know him so well despite it being such a short story. And so he's able to fit so much even in something that's like 30 pages or however long it was.
It feels like going home for me because it was our first project on the podcast. Like King stories, I always like Luke. I feel like I'm always in good hands. Maybe it won't be my favorite King story. Maybe it will be. But every time we, like, even coming to something like The Monkey, he's known for having books that are quite long. So reading a story like this that's so short, he can really like hone in on like what he wants to do with the story. This story, he wanted to show a bunch of different iterations of how this monkey affected people around this Hal character. And he does it with such pizzazz. And yeah, maybe he is kind of a victim of his own success, even though no, he's not. But like people are quick to say he's so popular that he's definitely like that lightning rod where people are like, yeah, well, this story, it wasn't that great. And say what you will, we all know about the cocaine years. We all know about, Maximum Overdrive and some of that kind of stuff. But like he has some of my favorite stories and he's one of those writers that I'm just glad that he exists and has, been as prolific as he has to inspire all these other artists.
I think he's such a long-running author with such a wide body of work that you can look for stuff to like support any claim you want to make about him. Like I'm sure he has some stories that are a little more shallow, but of course he has ones with a lot of depth. And not everybody reads them all. Not everybody reads any of them. Sometimes people have opinions on Stephen King based solely off of the films they've seen adapted from his work, and those often will give you a very skewed perspective on what the stories are actually like because they're usually quite different. This is an example of another one that is quite different. And we'll talk about all the ways in which it is, but also like even sort of tonally, it's quite different. It's an interesting one too because I felt like, and I don't want to get too far into the movie. We're gonna focus on the story, but I did feel like Osgood Perkins was reacting to sort of the zeitgeist way that a lot of people view '80s King. And it's like there's a lot of people like think back of those stories with a lot of fondness. They think they're very fun. And it felt like when he wanted to make this adaptation, he wanted to lean into that. And so we get a film that is quite fun and funny for a story that has elements of that, but it yet feels a lot more serious in some ways too.
Right. I mean, definitely seems to have been a story that King took seriously and wanted people to be afraid of. And I think there's an element of fear that comes in the film, but it's a horror comedy, capital comedy. Like it's meant to be absurd and it's meant to be sort of a subversion, I think, of a lot of horror.
So if you can remember back when you first read this story, Laura, for your coverage, do you remember if you read it before you saw the movie? And if so, how did it set you up? How did it prepare you? What were you going into the movie expecting to see?
So I read it first, which I listened to the audiobook, but then I also read it too. And the audiobook was narrated by Matthew Broderick.
Yeah, so I listened to that one too. Yeah.
And he has, I don't know if it's New England, but it sounded like a Maine accent.
Bit of an accent, yeah. Especially the way he pronounces terror. He's like, Terra?
Yeah.
I can't do
Terra.
it. Yeah.
But yeah, I thought the short story, again, he packed so much in there. Like you get a feel for Hal and his struggles and how he feels towards mainly his kids and his wife and, his inner demons, you could say. And then I thought it was really suspenseful, and it wasn't maybe scary, but it was definitely suspenseful, and there was a lot of tension. And so the movie, I didn't expect it to be, they could have stayed super faithful to it because there was enough there. I like this adaptation because Perkins, he didn't do a super faithful adaptation. Instead, he read this story and the aspects he connected with, he amplified and made it his own. Mm-hmm. And so it's funny because after I finished the story, I thought it was great. And I didn't have any complaints until after seeing the movie. And then I'm like, wow, now that I saw what they did with it, I kind of wish the story maybe would have made this change or that changed. Even though at the time I read it, I didn't think that.
I kind of understand where you're going with that because like I felt like in the moment I read this King story and it was like so self-contained. He just brought to fruition an idea, a concept here. And normally in King's work, it's like he has a concept and then he's building like 4 or 5 other layers on top of it. And because it's so short, it's like, here's the premise and I'm going to execute on that a few times and I'm going to give you backstory. And because of that, it does feel like this horror romp in a sense. Like it feels unlike a lot of other King, but it does, like Luke said, feel like what people think about when they think of King. So I appreciated it for that. But then I did feel like Perkins kind of put his own spin on it and then layered in some things that added some new elements of intrigue.
There's some interesting thematic stuff going on in the story, which we can get into here. In fact, let's just move like fully into the story here, and then we'll put off the movie for a moment. But I'll just go ahead and say The Monkey is a 1980 short story. It was originally published in Gallery magazine, and would later be significantly revised and included in the Skeleton Crew collection in 1985. I believe the version we all read is probably the revised version, so I don't know what that original story, like how it might have been different. It would be interesting to see, but this is the version that is now like sort of famous.
And I'm curious why it needed to be so revised.
I didn't see
was
that
King's
anywhere.
decision, or was
No.
that like things need to change in the story for it to be more widely acceptable?
I don't know. I would imagine it probably got a little longer because as much as we're all talking about how short this story is, it's a little long for a lot of magazine short stories, what they would usually want. But I could see King kind of beefing things up, maybe adding some more background, exploring some of the side characters a little more, because it felt like not particularly spare in a way that sometimes short stories have to, just because they have such a condensed time frame.
It is funny because I'm constantly comparing it to his other work. It feels spare for King.
Yeah.
It feels that way to me.
So this story, he has said, well, actually, I don't know. He's often mentioned the story called The Monkey's Paw by W.W. Jacobs as an influence.
I thought that maybe there was a connection there. I didn't know what came first. Monkey Paw is like, be careful what you ask for kind of situation.
Yeah. He said that Pet Sematary in particular was influenced by that, but I think some people have pointed at this as another potential story that might have been influenced by it. I think that's probably true. I haven't actually ever read that story. I just know about it through like the cultural zeitgeist, but I'm not super familiar with it. It apparently has a bunch of adaptations, so it is one we could potentially cover one day.
So I was going to say, I think I've seen an adaptation.
Yeah, same. I haven't read it, but I feel like that was one of those, like as a kid, my older siblings would tell stories like, oh, you ask for this and then you get it in the worst way, or like, in a dark, twisted way.
I feel like there's like the monkey paw like curls a finger or something, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The curl of the monkey paw is like the thing.
I don't see Stephen King's The Monkey being very similar. If anything, maybe the movie is more similar.
That's what I would point to, is I think maybe the movie took some of that.
But
But
I think it's also like a haunted toy, right? Even just on that, and it's a monkey, right? Like that kind of, or like the toy as antagonist, and it's all about the supernatural entity surrounding an item. In that sense, it's kind of similar, I guess. All right, so how about I give a quick plot rundown of the story, and then we can open it up for full story discussion. So The Monkey follows Hal Shelburne, a man haunted by a wind-up monkey toy that seems to bring death and misfortune. The story begins when Hal's son, Petey, discovers the monkey in a box while exploring the attic of Hal's childhood home. Hal reacts with dread, recalling his childhood experiences with the toy. In flashbacks, Hal remembers finding the monkey among his father's belongings in a storage closet. As a child, Hal noticed a disturbing pattern. Whenever the monkey clapped its cymbals, a death or calamity followed. These events included a fatal fall of Hal's childhood friend, Johnny McCabe, from a treehouse, and the death of his Aunt Ida's cat, which was run over by a car. Believing the monkey was cursed, young Hal threw it into a dry well near his home. Decades later, the monkey inexplicably resurfaces. Its reappearance unsettles Hal, who fears the safety of his family. Determined to destroy the toy, Hal and Petey go to Crystal Lake with the monkey in a flight bag weighted with rocks. Hal throws it into the deepest part of Crystal Lake, where he throws the bag into the water. As the bag sinks, Hal hears the faint sound of the monkey's cymbal clapping. During the disposal, the boat starts breaking up, but Hal manages to swim ashore to safety to Petey. The story ends with a newspaper clipping showing that hundreds of fish in the lake have died as a result. So, if you've seen the movie, you'll recognize that that's pretty different. Let's talk about the story for a moment, not about the movie, right? Like separate from the movie. What did you think of this plot? How it played out? Culmination, throwing it into the lake. Was it satisfying? So on and so forth.
I really liked the ending. I thought that was suspenseful, and I mean, King sometimes he'll kill his main character. So part of me, I was like, oh, like is he about to die right now? His son is going to have
Especially in
to.
short fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was concerned that that would happen as well. I was like, oh man, and especially because his son gets dragged into it. I'm like, he's sacrificing himself for his son. I could see that happen.
Yeah. But then I did love the ending too, because it shows that the monkey still has power and, I'm sure it can find its way out of the lake. The parts, which again, I didn't think of this as a critique until after the fact. So when I read it, I was fine with it. But when the monkey returns, it doesn't actually do anything. Like, it doesn't kill anybody. It tries to kill Hal. But part of me is like, maybe it should have felt more ominous, like maybe someone should have died. And there's a part where they like almost get in a car accident, I think, or something. But
Yeah, he like blocks the symbol and like barely
yeah.
saves his son from getting hit by a car.
But also how in the book, the monkey, like he drops it or something. And so it kind of starts to bang its symbols, but it just like does it on its own. So that was pretty ominous, where it's like, whoa, you don't even need to touch it and it could start going off and kill somebody.
And we've read enough King to know that there's like more to than meets the eye to a story like this, right? Like and I think Perkins picked up on some of this as well, but I think King was trying to tell a story about death, right, and how random death can be, and having the monkey not be motivated by somebody turning a key or anything like that, having it be just like something that goes off because it's around. And because of that, it's almost like the monkey's not doing anything. It's like the monkey's more of just like a warning that like this is going to happen. But tying those things together and trying to get rid of it and having it like teleport and reappear and all of this stuff is kind of how it's supernatural.
People in the book die in very normal ways. So it's not like these freak accidents. It's just real life things that could happen.
And that's what I was going to say. Why I found the story to be more frightening was because those deaths were so identifiable. Like and it spread to pets, right? Like if someone's cat dies, someone's dog dies
in brutal ways.
Brutal ways.
They had the worst death were the animals,
and that really sells it to me as like that's the horror for me. And I think there is an ambiguity on whether or not. Is it just letting you know that this is happening, or is it causing it? And I think at first Hal doesn't really know, but then starts to suspect that it is causing it. I mean, we're led to believe that as well.
And either way, do you want the monkey around to know, or do you just kind of want to live in blissful unawareness?
Yeah, you could maybe say that. It's better to just not know. But one of the things I picked up on in the story that I think I see a lot in King's work, and I saw here, was this idea of generational trauma. And how his father left when he was a kid, Hal's father. It really seemed like that absence in some ways is tied to the manifestation of just like the random cruelty of the world or the random evilness of the world, which often in King stories then manifests into some sort of monster or antagonist that the characters will face. And here it's the monkey, which I think it's notable, right? Like it's found by his kids. And he now is faced with it again, because often in King stories as well, you can like temporarily defeat evil. You can like score a win on it, but usually it's not destroyed. Usually it can come back. It sort of underscores that idea of like, if you have trauma, you can sort of find a way to deal with it, but it's not like it's gone. It's not like you can erase it from your past. And it's still something that is going to threaten you going forward. So I liked that, all those sort of thematic elements coming together in the story, and how like at the end Hal is saving his son through a sort of heroic act and being present for his son, right, in a direct opposition to the absent father that he had growing up. And I know that a lot of this ties into like with Stephen King's own life and his family history. So I felt like there was a lot of depth there if you wanted to look for it.
Yeah, and it's funny because when I first read it, I wasn't really thinking about many of those themes. Like I liked how we see Hal with his older son, Dennis, and how the two of them Dennis is also not getting along great with his mom, and they speculate he's on drugs, and, so there's some tension between them. And then also how Dennis is mean to the brother Petey, and Petey gets the monkey, but Hal is like, oh, it's because Dennis didn't want it, and that's the only reason he would give it to his brother, because he's such a jerk. But yeah, so obviously there's like those family elements. When I initially read it, I liked the character development, but I mostly just saw it as like a interesting, fun horror story, which is funny because at the start of this episode, I was saying people don't give King enough credit. But yeah, honestly, it wasn't until the movie that I was able to see more of those themes.
So you talked about the relationship between Hal and Dennis, and early on there's like a scuffle, and then the mom thinks that she's like just wailing on this kid, and he's actually just like kind of pinned him up against the wall and is trying to get him, talk some sense into him.
Well, he's slamming him against a door, though.
Right, which is
clearly an
uncalled for,
abusive sort of moment here in the story.
Right, and the fact that she was worried that he was doing more is probably because he's done that in the past.
Yeah, or it sounded like he was, yeah.
And so, but over the course of the story, we get to see these characters, like we see growth in his character, at least I think, and like in leading up to what you talked about with like him being there for his son, and that is something that I think he's always got those details that are gonna like speak to some emotional core to the story.
Yeah,
and I do think that here, whether that's some of himself or not, like I think that was effective storytelling.
It's interesting that it is a different son that he connects with at the end than the one he had that moment with.
Right.
And this reminds me a lot of the themes we saw in The Shining, and when we were reading about the backstory behind that, and that King was working through his own worries about becoming an abusive father himself. And he often talks about how, like, or in his stories at least, you'll see abusive characters as parents who will then sort of pass on that trait to their kids, who will then in turn become abusive. And I think King struggled with that and didn't want to follow in those footsteps, but felt the temptation because that was what you sort of know growing up. And I think we see a lot of that in Hal. And I think this makes it powerful. I kind of would have liked to see Dennis be present at the end, since that moment was such an important one for understanding the characters. It is a little strange to me that he's just sort of absent from the finale of this short story.
I do agree. I feel like it would have been more satisfying if it was Dennis, but they do have one moment though where maybe it's after like he pushes him against the wall, but he also tells him like, hey, after we get home in 3 days, I'm going to look through your room. So if there's something you don't want me to find, make sure you get rid of it. And so I thought that was kind of a good moment between them where he's, giving him a chance to get rid of any drugs he might have. And so in some ways, he's able to repair things to some extent with him.
Interesting to see that level of restraint from a parent like that, yeah.
And it seems like maybe it's alluded to that he could get, like when he was going through a rough time, maybe he would get violent, but then they've been smooth going. And so maybe the arrival of this monkey and being in his hometown has him, pushing Dennis up against a wall again. And maybe that is starting to come back to some extent.
I just like to think of King, because this is around a time where he was probably starting to write some of these like iconic pieces of work, like The Shining, like Pet Sematary, like a lot of these things, like maybe they were in early stages or you're starting to have ideas. And a lot of authors, you'll see a recurrent themes in a lot of their work. And I feel like I could see a lot of stuff here that is present in a lot of like my favorite Stephen King's books, especially from this era of Stephen King.
Classic King elements too, right? Like lost their job, down on their luck, struggling.
Takes it out on their family.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
One last thing I want to touch on for the story is how at the end of it, we get this moment where it seems that they have defeated the monkey, perhaps. It's at the bottom of the lake. The boat falls apart, but he's able to get to shore. And then there's like a newspaper clipping that says that a bunch of fish have died. So that seems like direct evidence of this. But we also get this like vision / maybe he's just imagining it. We don't really know about a future father and son, I believe it is, duo, who are there fishing, and they like snag the monkey on the fishing line and draw it up. And then now that evil is being passed on to someone else. What were your thoughts on this moment? Is this a premonition? Is this just like a sign of the evil being ongoing, or is this just about fear?
That kind of reminds me of the end of Pet Sematary, which kind of spoilers for Pet Sematary for anyone listening. But at the end, he says something about how like one day a new family will move in and they'll have a child with a pet that dies and they'll be told about the Pet Sematary. So showing how grief, everybody has to deal with it. And it's, one family. I mean, in the end of Pet Sematary, that family doesn't come out of it well, but how every family has to deal with it in one way or another. And even if they try to stop, like everybody goes through it, kind of a thing. So yeah, maybe that's what he's saying with this too. Like, Dennis and Hal and Petey have come out of it for the better, but there's always someone, and everybody to some extent has to go through.
Well, and if the monkey represents something sort of primal, and this random violence, but also a manifestation of it sort of carrying on through generations. Like, yeah, even if you are able to cut it out of your life, like, it doesn't mean it's gone from the world, right? And like King often is dealing with like these things sort of take on a physical manifestation in the world and continue on to haunt people.
And to tie it to the thing that I think that it's most closely related to as well is it's a harbinger of death, right?
Yeah.
So like death is coming for everyone, whether this monkey is down at the bottom of the well or the bottom of this lake or not. And when somebody does find it again, people are going to keep dying, and that's that's a fact of life that people are going to have to like deal with. So while it's a very it lives story for like a monster, creature, entity in a horror story, it also kind of is in fitting with what it's meant to represent, I think, in the story, whether it's the trauma or just death.
Yeah. All right. If you're ready, I think we can move into the movie. Hey, future editing Luke here. I realized that as we get into this part about the movie, we got so excited talking with Laura that we don't give a proper warning for spoilers, but we are pretty loose with them. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, just be aware spoilers are coming.
I will let you guys just kind of give your general thoughts on the film. Let me know about what your theater going experience was like, any notable things that happened there.
So I've actually seen this movie twice now. The first time I saw it was opening weekend, and the theater was full and people seemed to like it. The second time was yesterday, and I was the only one in the theater,
Was that spookier?
It kind of did. I was like, oh, I've never watched a horror movie by myself in a theater like that. So it was kind of weird. But the first time I watched this, there was one like plot detail that I was confused on. And I was like, did he just not explain that well? And then a couple other things I didn't love. But the second time, the plot detail I was unsure on, he actually does explain it. I just hadn't caught it.
Wait, what was the plot detail? You got to share.
It had to do with the cop guy and his dad and his connection to all of this. I was confused on that. And then some moments of humor I still didn't love, like the priest and the cheerleaders. I feel like something about it. I was like, I don't get it. Maybe.
But like separately, you don't like both of those two details?
Yeah. So the scene with the priest, I love
the priest. I absolutely love the priest. I want to
I've
go to a
heard
church
people
with a
that
priest
do
like
like
that.
it. Yeah.
It's like very comedic horror where it's like way over the top, way bloody, way ridiculous. Is that something that you typically are into, Laura?
I do like horror comedies. Yeah. So this is definitely something that's up my alley, but I think the priest, I just had a hard time, like, even though this is in some like weird, quirky, dark alternate reality, I was like, what kind of a priest would be talking like this right now? Like, I just wasn't believing it.
It seemed like he wasn't even a priest. Like, he just wandered in and put on the smock or something.
Yeah, exactly.
I noticed a detail in the credits that actually made me enjoy this, and maybe this will bring you some joy. They list him in the credits as rookie priest.
Rookie? Okay. So
it was his first funeral.
So maybe it's his first one.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then also the cheerleaders, like when they were cheering for the body to come out, I'm like, why would high school cheerleaders be there? Like, again, maybe I'm thinking too hard about it, but I'm like, I don't understand it. And they die in the end. But even that, I'm like,
it's to set up that gag, I think.
Yeah.
Well, partially. I too, I felt like it was so weird, and I was thinking about it. I wonder if it's like some play on true crime and this idea of like, it's typically with serial killers and stuff like that, people will go to like their executions and be cheering and stuff like that. Yeah. And this is this sick fascination that people have with death. And we can get more into this as we talk about like maybe some of Perkins' intentions with this film. But like, I think people are weirdly fascinated by how people die, when people die. You know what I mean? Like that's information that people are into. And then of course, no one's actually cheering when bodies are brought out, but like to play with that and to say like, how crazy is this that we as humans are like so drawn to it, even though we're so scared of it?
I like that interpretation, because at this point, a lot of people have died. So it makes sense that there would be this weird following.
I think it does, right? If you follow the true crime circles, there are people who definitely have a strange relationship to this kind of stuff. But I also liked that this movie was clearly making an attempt to just layer in surprises and find ways to surprise us where we're not expecting a surprise, right? And surprising not only with like a surprising horror moment, but a surprising bit of comedy. And it was so loaded with these moments. that it definitely won me over, because I would say, like, I'm generally not drawn to films like this. I do like horror comedy, but I tend to go for more of like Shaun of the Dead, like, I don't know, like a wittier style of comedy. Whereas this was a lot more like just over the top, campy, kind of gory, like stuff's breaking physics left and right. And yet there was a layer of actual like genuine creepiness and scares to it. I will grant that. And it won me over. Like, as I was watching it, I was like, this isn't usually the kind of thing I would like, but I'm having a lot of fun with this. And it felt like the comedy was really targeted towards horror fans, right? Like, people who watch a lot of horror are going to find this funny, I think, in a way that maybe if you are sort of new to the horror genre, maybe you won't get. But to me, it plays a lot on like our shared cultural experience of watching a lot of slasher movies, watching a lot of these like Final Destination style movies where, you know, things happen in crazy ways, or like Saw, like these Rube Goldberg devices. And he's able to play with all of that a little bit, and like we can all laugh at it as like people who just enjoy the genre.
Yeah.
So the first time I liked it a lot, but honestly, the second time I liked it even more. And this could almost, I feel like it could almost be like a comfort movie for me, because it's entertaining. It flies by. It has great pacing. And then it still has a heart to it, though. So I like that, too. It's not just like some empty horror movie with characters you don't care about. Like, I felt invested, and I loved the ending. And yeah, so I liked it even more the second time.
Very cool. I had a total roller coaster ride with this film. I went in thinking, I'm going to love this movie no matter what. I started the film. I enjoyed like the first act or so. And I was like, this is really cool. I like the way this is being set up. Then there's almost like a tonal shift in the middle of the movie. And then I started like backing away from the film a little bit. I'm like, what the hell is happening?
Do you remember what marked the shift? Was it the death of the mother?
Death of the mother, that in that range, like into the like some of the stuff that they had after the time skip, like after the 24 years later. And I was just like, what is happening in this film? Like what is being attempted here? Because there was so much like, it felt like uneven. I was like, I'm not really understanding what like the tone is. By like, I would say the 3/4 mark and into the end of the film, I clicked in and was like, I actually really like this movie. I would say borderline love this movie. And I think part of that journey had to do with like, how much are you willing to think of this as like a meta commentary on horror in general, the different styles, and like a love letter to horror in a sense. And yeah, like ridiculous bodies exploding and stuff like that, like typically isn't the thing that's getting me into the theater. But I was like, Osgood Perkins, I love Longlegs. Like I'm sure that I'm gonna love this. And that's the other thing, is I was going in thinking this is gonna be like Longlegs-esque, like it was gonna be something like that. But he totally subverted my expectations, and I think that was like the intention along the way. And like Laura said, the thing that really sent everything home for me is that he subverted even like the comedy horror genre, because the comedic element, like sometimes there'll be comedy horror films that have a heart. This film is like, it's like you have to be on board with that heart. And there's actually like a significant amount of things that like stack up to make this a really sweet film, and like to kind of in such a crazy way bring you along on the journey. And I would say, I'm going to shout out Tatiana Maslany, who I've already liked for a long time from Orphan Black. But I think like so much of what she does and talks to the children about early on that carries through is she like
steals
what
the
really
show whenever she's on screen. She's so good.
Yeah, and she was the home run aspect for me. Like once her sort of pressure on the film is felt nearing the end, I'm like, oh my God, this is brilliant. I felt like the unevenness went away for me. Like everything sort of settled. I wonder if Osgood Perkins' intention all along was to just send even people who are like pretty massive horror fans on a ride and a journey to say like, am I enjoying this? Am I not? And even like, yeah, ridiculous things like the rookie priest, and then having these like really heartfelt moments and these like ideas on life and like enjoying life and like living it, even though there's all this absurdity around us. It just landed at the end, and I was so shocked.
I did want to say too, along with Tatiana Maslany, I mean, I really liked Theo James, but Christian Convery, the child actor, the first time I watched this, I did not know they were the same kid, because I thought he did a great job playing these two very different brothers. And so it wasn't until after I saw it the first time that I realized the same kid played both of them. And then same with Theo James. I thought he was great in both of the roles, which it's funny. I know you guys just watched Mickey 17, another movie that has an actor playing
I
against
love that you
himself.
picked up on that because it's just the weirdest thing to me. I was like, we watched back-to-back movies in theaters, and many people probably had the same experience because they came out somewhat close to each other.
Also, something else that's kind of funny, a similarity, is that both stories involve the death of a mother and someone blaming themselves or the other for this death. And so I was like, wow, these two kind of have some similar themes, that one similar theme. But yeah, a funny connection there.
So yeah, I guess overall, I would say this movie, I recommend it for horror fans. Like if you're someone who has seen a decent number of slasher films, over the top, so when I'm listing off Final Destination, Saw, like if these are all familiar franchises to you, I think you're going to have a lot of fun with this. I also think it works well as a Stephen King adaptation for the reason I touched on at the very start of this episode, where I think it's like Osgood Perkins is wanted to make a film that felt like how a lot of people remember 80s King, and the fun that they had with it. And there's a certain fondness for it. And I feel like he sort of nails that feeling here. So I've seen a lot of people reacting and calling this like one of the best Stephen King adaptations in a long time. I don't know if I agree with that, but it definitely feels like a good one to me. It helps that you're adapting something that is a story a lot of people aren't super familiar with, I think. But a lot of it is tonal, and it just feels very fun.
Osgood Perkins as a director, too, is somebody that was brought to my attention. I don't know about you, but we had on Paul Tremblay for a creative conversation, and he mentioned that he was a director that he would love to adapt his work.
That he had written a screenplay of Head Full of Ghosts that didn't end up coming to be. But
Osgood
now
Perkins?
that I've seen... Yeah.
Wow.
Now that I've seen several Osgood Perkins movies, I am even more upset that apparently that screenplay is not gonna.
Well, maybe they will work together at some point down the line. Let's hope for that. But I that was a blind spot for me. Osgood Perkins was, and it's so crazy because there's so much about this person that like I should have that it was so in my wheelhouse. But anyway, he was the person who brought him to my attention. I've since seen most of his films.
I think he also has an adaptation of a fairy tale that we could cover at some
Gretel
point.
and Hansel.
Gretel and Hansel.
Gretel and Hansel. Yeah, I have not seen that, so I know that.
I was
that's
thinking
on the
about that
list.
today. We need to add that to the list because we should cover more Perkins. So Longlegs came out soon after we had that coverage, and then he mentioned, this is getting into Osgood Perkins' bio now. He also mentioned to us that Osgood Perkins was the son of Anthony Perkins, who's famous for his role as Norman Bates in Psycho, which we've covered on the podcast. We love that film. It's one of those roles that like people think about along the lines of like a Darth Vader, or
It's
like
one of the
that
most
iconic
horror roles of all time, probably.
Yeah.
Also, I wanted to say that when I saw The Monkey the second time, the dream sequence where Hal's body is spinning, it kind of reminded me of the dream in Vertigo, where he's having that trippy dream, and Perkins' dad worked with Alfred Hitchcock. So I don't know if that was him doing an intentional nod to another Hitchcock movie.
I like that. I have not seen Vertigo. Are you familiar with that one, James?
You haven't seen Vertigo?
No.
Oh my God. Dude.
You have to remember, there's a lot of movies I haven't seen.
That's just blowing my mind right now, dude. Jesus. Anyway, Vertigo. I mean, that's probably as well known as Psycho. And that you're talking about the like push pull that they do, the sort of like dolly zoom, right? That effect.
That too. But also like Jimmy Stewart's body is like falling down this weird kaleidoscope something, and he has a trippy dream, and then Hal has his trippy dreams.
What a cool moment that was in the movie too.
Yeah, and it's cool like Perkins taking it, like that's a big swing to put something like that in your film while the tone is allowing for basically anything because it's so absurd. When that sequence started, I was like, this is so bizarre, so strange, and like didn't feel like it fit with the rest of the movie, but it worked for me, and it visually looks very cool. So talking about Osgood Perkins, he's an American filmmaker and actor born in New York City. He's the elder son of actor Anthony Perkins, as we just talked about, and photographer actress Barry Berenson. Perkins' upbringing in a family deeply rooted in the arts significantly influenced his creative path. He made his acting debut at age 9, portraying a young Norman Bates in Psycho 2 in 1983.
Oh, wow.
A character immortalized by his father.
We might have to watch that as a bonus at some point. I know it's been on our list for a little while.
Yeah, I think, that's another huge reason why we should cover it, right?
Yeah, there you go.
This early exposure to the horror genre foreshadowed his future directorial endeavors. He has since appeared in the films 6 Degrees of Separation, Legally Blonde, Not Another Teen Movie, Secretary, La Cucina, Star Trek, and Nope, as well as episodes of Alias and other TV shows. So after he was Norman Bates, a young Norman Bates, he went on to act in quite a few films, some that people of our generation are definitely very familiar with. And it's just wild that he was in like Star Trek. He was, in 2009, he was in Legally Blonde. So he's just like got a lot of like really interesting roles, and like the almost horror royalty that he represents is just so interesting to think about.
And he's in this movie as the uncle.
And now he's carved out this niche in the horror genre. He's known for his atmospheric and psychologically complex storytelling. His directorial debut, The Black Coat's Daughter in 2015, showcases his penchant for slow-burning narratives that delve into themes of isolation and the supernatural. He continued this trajectory with I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House in 2016 and Gretel and Hansel in 2020, both of which highlighted his ability to intertwine classic horror elements with modern sensibilities. And then he moved in to directing Longlegs and now The Monkey.
Yeah,
and
Longlegs was like a big deal for him, right? Like that seems like his movie that did it got the most widespread acclaim, and it seemed like it did really well.
I think that's the one that put him on the map for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And while he maybe was known, Longlegs was something that like kind of put him over the top, and now he's like kind of able to do. And even Theo James said like he's kind of this filmmaker now that in this horror space, this smaller indie. I'm not even going to call it indie anymore, but this horror space, he can kind of do whatever he wants, and he's on such a streak right now. So Longlegs was 2024. The Monkey, which we're covering, is 2025, and he has another film that's upcoming that's going to also release in 2025. It's called Keeper.
Okay, I haven't heard of that one.
So I saw Gretel and Hansel, but it's been a while, and I did not watch Longlegs because I was too scared. It looked like one that would give me nightmares. But The Monkey, I assumed it would be more serious because Gretel and Hansel and Longlegs definitely are. But then I saw Seven when it did its IMAX release, and they played a trailer for The Monkey beforehand, so that gave me a look into like, oh, okay.
Yeah, the trailer kind of signals what kind of tone the movie's going to have.
Yeah, so I knew what I was getting into thanks to the trailer. But yeah, I think a lot of people were thrown off by the humor and the weird tone based on his other stuff.
I think if you can watch Seven in the theater, you probably would have been okay with Longlegs.
Oh, really?
I agree.
If Seven wasn't giving you tons of nightmares.
It's very in keeping with like a Silence of the Lambs feel.
Yeah.
Like I think Seven is like a decent comparison as far as like tension.
I don't know. I'm always urging people to push their boundaries on what they're comfortable with horror, so I should probably respect that you identified Longlegs as a film you didn't want to see. That's fine.
Yeah. Also, just in general, like horror comedy is like my niche. Like that is like what I like. That's the kind of things I want to create. That's the kind of things that I love. And like I just going into this film, I knew that it was going to be horror comedy. I had seen the trailer, but after Longlegs, I just expected it to be more like art house in some way. Like I thought it was going to be something, but that it wasn't.
There were some moments of that, like that moment where the monkey is outside on the porch looking in. That felt like it evoked like a similar sense of unease and uncanniness that we got in Longlegs quite a bit. There's like certain moments where I could really tell it's the same director, because otherwise this felt like a completely different kind of film.
I mean, his films like I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, The Black Coat's Daughter, Gretel and Hansel, Longlegs. These are all films that like made me think about a certain type of filmmaker, and it's so funny that like he just subverted all that, and that's like exactly what he wanted to do here. But anyway, I was surprised by it, and it took me on quite a journey that I really respect at this point. And I'm like, I think it's difficult to give me like a novel, unique experience in a sense, and like he totally did. He delivered on that. So I saw that he was featured in the second episode of the Shudder documentary miniseries Queer for Fear: The History of Queer Horror in 2022, in which he discusses the legacy of his father's role as Norman Bates in Psycho and its sequels. And I think that like we talked about a little bit in the Psycho coverage of Anthony Perkins and how he was closeted, and then went through conversion therapy and was soon after with Barry Berenson, who is Osgood Perkins' mother. And like sort of some of the, like what's in that, I think Osgood Perkins has like brought into his work some, and then saw kind of what his father struggled with in general, just in terms of like being able to be the person that he actually was, and like society kind of like pushing against that, and some of the struggles that he had. And then his eventual passing from, I think, pneumonia that was connected to AIDS. So that's like something that Perkins had like carries with him, and I think you can see elements of that in his work, and some of the trauma that characters are going through. And along those lines, because this film is so much about death and so much about trauma in a way, I also didn't realize this until doing research, but it's something that Laura mentioned before we began recording, and that's that his mother, Barry Berenson, was actually on one of the flights that hit the towers on 9/11.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so for her to die in such a tragic and like,
On one of the
I mean,
flights,
like
wow.
unprecedented way. He lost both of his parents at young ages, and like obviously he's had to deal with a lot of that, and he has a brother. And so like I think notably this film is dealing with some of the absurdities and ways that people can leave our lives. The idea of like father-son relationships, brother-brother relationships. I think a lot of that can be seen in this film, and I think like that also helped me like continue to respect this film and love it even more, is like understanding like his context and what the story he would probably be bringing to this. I just like I'm pretty amazed at like the way that he can navigate the messaging of this film and then come out on the other end of it with through all the stuff that he's been through, and still see like comedy as the way to kind of look at some of the absurdities and some of these like graphic, unbelievable ways that people are dying in this film, and just like because crazy shit like that happens to people and people that are in their lives, and it's just not something that everybody experiences, but he has.
Yeah, and him being someone who is so familiar with dealing with grief and his dad, but his mom, I don't know how sudden his dad's death was, but his mom's death obviously was very sudden. And something I love about the movie is how Hal and Bill, their not even processing, like the way they try to handle their grief in very different ways. And they're both very unhealthy ways. And so it makes me wonder, like, has Perkins at times tried the Hal route? Has he tried the Bill route? And maybe now he's come to a better place. But the unhealthy ways we deal with grief and trauma, and having that in mind the second time is also what made me like it even more.
I read a quote that kind of goes along with what you were saying, and he said, quote, "I was like, oh right, this story is about this thing that creates these obscene deaths, these really unthinkable weird tragedies that come out of nowhere. Well, I've experienced unthinkable weird tragedies that come out of nowhere. I'm an expert at this. And whereas when they happened to me, I was certainly defeated by them. I'm an older person now. I'm a father. I wouldn't have got to, I'm making a comedy about the fact that everybody dies if I hadn't had so many years of feeling cursed and heartbroken." And he talked a little bit about like how he has a brother, and his brother is a performer as well. He's a musician, and how like they are just like completely different people, and they've dealt with that grief in different ways. And then obviously you can see brothers in this film, like you said, Laura, are dealing with this in very different ways.
Yeah, I felt like they really wanted to focus on the brother relationship in a way that the story doesn't really get a chance to explore, between was it Dennis and Petey. And here it becomes essential, right? And them sort of bonding over a shared grief towards the end becomes an important turning point, I think, for the end of the story.
Yeah. Something else that I wanted to note about Perkins, he said, quote, "If the commonly accepted urge on the son's part is to understand the father or to atone with the father, then it makes sense that you would try to emulate a certain path. So the fact that my father was this cultural icon in the horror space, it makes sense that it would be an avenue where I might look to find myself. What I've tried to do in the past couple of movies is to see myself doing that, to be aware of that. So it's just like, I mean, like imagine the shoes that you feel that you have to fill when your father is a cultural icon in the horror space, and the fact that he's like even ventured into this space to great effect, like to making these like really amazing films, and he's one of these horror directors now that I'm like, I'm gonna see everything that this guy releases.
That makes me think of like Joe Hill or Owen King, authors who are working in horror. Obviously in the shadow of their father, who is so huge that you can't not be in his shadow. Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if they know each other. Seems like they'd have a lot to talk about.
Totally, yeah. Perkins said that his father, an avid reader, is who got him into Stephen King. So Anthony Perkins is who got Osgood Perkins into Stephen King, and now he's directed an adaptation of his work.
That's awesome. Also, Luke mentioned this earlier, but I'm definitely in the group that feels like the last good King adaptation we got. I mean, Dr. Sleep, I did listen to your guys' episode a couple of years ago, and I know you had, at the time, I don't know if you've changed your opinions, but you had some conflicting, you guys don't love that movie, but I think Dr. Sleep was a fantastic adaptation, so I feel like that was the last good one. Although I also know you guys had issues with this too, but I also kind of liked the 2020 adaptation of The Stand. But still, even The Stand was like almost 5 years ago now. So the more recent ones, like Firestarter and Mr. Harrigan's Phone and
Salem's Lot,
Salem's
unfortunately.
Lot. Yeah, like they've
Yeah.
all kind of sucked. So I do think this is the best one we've had in like 5 or 6 years.
Apparently, I dodge a lot of the bad ones because I haven't seen a lot of those.
I think Doctor Sleep is much better than some of those other ones we were just talking about, of course. And like The Stand, I mean, we can just go down this rabbit hole, but it's like sometimes it's about like potential versus what we get. And I think that's ultimately what a lot of King comes down to. For a lot of King fans in general is like they're so attached to the work, and I feel very attached to a lot of Stephen King's work. And sometimes I'm happy with people to take liberties, like The Shining, and other times I'm like, oh, I don't know, this deviated to the point that like I don't even see why. Like the Carrie remake, where I was just like, what are we? This doesn't feel like it was necessary. It doesn't feel like it's like staying all that true to King.
Yeah, I mean, just real quickly, I agree about that Carrie one. That's a good example. Yeah, I think our Doctor Sleep criticism just boils down to, and this is how I've talked about it to people after the fact, I think it was a good adaptation of the novel. I struggled to see it as a good sequel to the film, and I think that's where it rubbed me the wrong way. A lot of people who I think were frustrated with a lot of the changes in the original Shining liked what Mike Flanagan did with the Overlook and that sort of like the legacy of that film. And to me, it just didn't land super well. I don't know. You'd have to listen back to the episode, but I haven't seen it again, so I'm open to it. I also know there's like an extended version out there somewhere that I haven't seen. So maybe that would improve it for me a little bit, but it just felt like it was trying to be a sequel to both the book, The Shining, and also the film at the same time, in a way that was a little strange, but to each their own. And then, The Stand, that 2020 Stand, I really didn't like. So I don't.
Yeah.
I'll have to listen to your episodes on it and see what you found in it. I know I liked the early episodes more than the end. I just feel like it really didn't end well for me. So I'll be curious to see what you said.
I mean, I definitely had some big issues with it, but I guess I also went in with low expectations. So
it used to be my favorite King novel. I used to say it was The Stand for a long time. I would probably say Pet Sematary now, but maybe Misery. Misery is also really up there. Like it was a more recent one we covered that I really, really liked. And The Shining is so good. I don't know. I'm hard pressed.
All right, we're talking The Monkey. So moving back into this.
Back to the movie.
In writing the film, Perkins chose to give it comedic elements because he thought it would be more fitting for a film about a toy, and he wanted to distinguish the monkey from more serious horror films about possessed toys. I think he mentioned things like Megan or some of the other like toy centric,
like an Annabelle or something about a doll.
Annabelle, there you go.
Yeah.
They are taken very seriously, and it's like we're talking about a doll, guys. I mean, it's like still got to be within that fun realm, and of course it is. Like, don't get me wrong, they're fine, but to pull this all the way into the comedic realm, I think it's really inspired. I think it works really well for what it is.
I saw somewhere that he said he wanted to have all of the deaths be unnatural, like not any death that a person could watch the movie and say like, oh, I know, my aunt died that way. Like, he didn't want to have anybody say, oh, my aunt died because she got shot with a harpoon and her guts were all pulled out. He's like, yeah, no, that didn't happen, so I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. Wait, your aunt didn't dive into a pool that was electrified
and explode. And that is a very notable difference, I think, between the two, right? Like that stands out to me in that all the deaths in King's short story were very real. It was like someone getting hit by a drunk driver, someone falling out of a treehouse, like having a brain aneurysm, which is the one that like kind of makes it in, but it's shown in a way that is so over the top. But yeah, I mean, like we have some wild deaths here. Hibachi death. That was so ridiculous. Entire head chopped off.
Yes. Yep. Very sharp knives at the hibachi, at the local hibachi there.
So just a brief story about that. I did, a friend of mine, Ian, came out and watched the movie with me last night, and his birthday was like a month ago. And for the first time we went to a hibachi thing, he had never been to hibachi before. So it was just really funny, like watching this movie with him. He had just had his first experience with hibachi, and then we see someone get decapitated. Yeah.
Perkins further stated that the comedy in the film intentionally avoids subtlety and makes use of extreme gore to joke about the absurdity, pointlessness, and randomness of death. Perkins stated fully to Empire on his approach to the material. I took liberties like a motherfucker. They, Atomic Monster, which was the production company, had a very serious script, very serious. I felt it was too serious, and I told them this doesn't work for me.
Oh man, I wish I had said this, but in my notes I bet there's a more serious version of this script that exists.
Apparently there was.
And apparently there was. That's so funny.
The thing with this toy monkey is that the people around it all die in insane ways. So I thought, well, I'm an expert on that. Both my parents died in insane headline-making ways. I spent a lot of my life recovering from tragedy, feeling quite bad. It all seemed inherently unfair. You personalize the grief. Why is this happening to me? But I'm older now, and you realize this shit happens to everyone. Everyone dies. Sometimes in their sleep, sometimes in truly insane ways, like I experienced. But everyone dies, and I thought maybe the best way to approach that insane notion is with a smile.
Nice.
Which I just absolutely love. I think that messaging really works for me, and that's kind of that Tatiana Maslany
her
line.
character embodies that. And that speech she gives to the kids, where
It's
she's
so
like,
good.
I'm going to die, you're going to die.
All your friends are going to die.
Everybody you've ever met is
their
going to die.
families are going to die.
The way she just delivers it is somehow so comforting, and I love that they go and have their like dance after that, and it's like their fondest memory.
Well, she's like, everybody dies, and then she's like, so let's go dancing or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is life. Like that is so like motivational to me, and that is so like that makes me feel better. I don't know.
Just enjoy it while you can. That's like actual existentialist, philosophy. I like that.
Yeah, totally agree.
So director Frank Darabont originally held the rights to the Stephen King short story, The Monkey. He planned to begin working on a film adaptation upon completing The Mist, which was that 2007 film, itself an adaptation of one of King's novellas.
In the
project
same
never
collection, by the way, in
materialized.
Skeleton Crew.
Yeah.
What a collection, by the way. So many iconic stories are in that collection. It's wild.
That Frank Darabont project never materialized, and then eventually Osgood Perkins was connected around 2023 to write and direct, with James Wan producing under Atomic Monster banner.
That was something my friend Ian pointed out, the James Wan connection, and how he said this felt a little more like a James Wan movie. I haven't watched a lot of Wan, I don't think. What is he known for? Like
The Conjuring.
Conjuring
is
okay.
his big
I've never seen a
horror
Conjuring
one.
movie.
He's also known for he's produced a lot of the Blumhouse stuff that's come out of the last 10, 20 years.
So like super gory, more shocking.
Kind of.
The first Conjuring, it has multiple things, but that one has the Annabelle doll, right? So it's another one of those that has a child toy.
Correct, yeah. So yeah, I mean I don't know how all of what he's connected to, but I know
and as a producer, it's hard to know how involved he actually was.
it varies so much between projects, yeah. But I do think that your friend is correct. This does feel like it's got the James Wan influence in it, and maybe that's not giving Perkins enough credit, but because it totally is his vision clearly. But James Wan probably had some good advice as far as how to explode a human and make it look realistic on film.
I don't know if it looked realistic, but it was funny.
Yeah.
That was there were so many genuine laughs I had in this movie, especially after some pretty horrific moments, and it's because they're so over the top. When she just the last thing in the world I expected was for her to actually explode.
Yeah, the places that it goes with the horror and specifically the gore, I never would have expected out of Perkins, and here we are.
Yeah, it's mischievous.
It looks like someone drop kicked a cherry pie.
Oh my god.
And that's how he dies. That's how Osgood Perkins' character dies in the movie, which is a funny way.
It's also a rite of passage to get to kill yourself in a horror movie, I think, if you're a director.
Or just in a movie that you're directed. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. This movie's done well financially, which is great to with Mickey 17 not doing as well as I would have liked.
Yeah.
The Monkey has grossed $56.2 million as of March 16th. So it definitely made, I think it's on a budget of 10 to 11 million. So good on Perkins for continuing to make profitable films and getting to take big swings. And this is just great for the horror space. And hopefully other directors get to, coast off of this some too.
I feel like this had the combination of it's Stephen King, which seems to be a crowd pleaser, but then fresh off of Longlegs, right? So I feel like that definitely brought in a lot of people.
Yeah, that probably helps, writing a little bit of that success. But I mean, it's a solid movie. I think it's a good one for it.
It's also kind of a situation where people are pretty divided on this film. I've seen a lot of even horror fans saying it just wasn't for them. They didn't like it. It was ridiculous, or it wasn't.
I mean, it is ridiculous. It's one of those movies that, again, I think there's a version of me, or even just past me in the Ship of Theseus discussion. Some older version of Luke back in the year 2000.
So younger version,
who didn't I didn't really connect with campy horror. And for a long
Yeah.
time, I didn't like any campy horror movies. Like, people would show me, like, what is it, like, there's, like, the Jason movie where he's in space.
Jason X.
And there's, like, shit like that where it's just, like, so over the top and, like, he's killing people in ridiculous ways. And I remember I had friends who, like, loved those movies and, like, it was so fun. And, like, I don't know why. It's, like, I couldn't, like, it was, like, it just didn't work for me. Like, the seriousness of murder and the gore, and then you're at the same time just, like, having all this fun with it. I don't know. It just, for the longest time, that didn't work for me. But I think, like, something has clicked in the last, like, I don't know, 10 years or so, where I really started to enjoy some of that stuff.
I was going to say, I think I've seen you have a journey with camp in general, even outside of horror, but like just
True, across
on the
multiple
podcast.
genres. Laura, how do you feel about campy movies and campy horror in particular?
I think I have always liked dark comedies, but it's interesting because ever since I was a kid, I've liked horror because my dad liked scary movies. And so I would watch them with him, even though I could get scared so easily. And so it was this weird thing where sometimes I didn't like how scared I would get. But so I think when I was younger, I liked horror comedies because the comedies kind of helps it not seem as scary. But then as I've gotten older, that's also a critique I'll sometimes have. But specifically maybe in books, because I read a book that was a horror comedy. And there were moments where it would be so creepy and then they would crack a joke. And I'm like, man, you just ruined it by trying to make it funny. So I feel like
I can agree with that. Sometimes a joke can really deflate a scene and take all the
It's a
tension out
delicate
of it.
balance.
Yeah. So I feel like it has to be done well to work. But yeah, I do like the horror comedies and campy stuff. But that's not to say it always lands for me.
That's something fun about this movie too, is it's like you can be along for the ride, enjoy it, and still be like, I don't know about that one scene or that one death or something. You know what I mean? Like, that's totally valid, and like it makes a lot of sense. All right, I'm going to open up to you both, and we're going to talk specific details about the film, differences from the story, what's standing out to you. Let's start with like the first third of the movie. Is there anything specific in there that you want to talk about?
Adam Scott.
Oh, yeah.
Right off the heels of Severance, he's like, I'm going to go right into this movie.
Yeah, I loved his cameo.
It's very fun.
But yeah, also I wanted to say I saw multiple movie reviewers be like, oh, they say the person who turns the key like doesn't die, but then they're like, the shop owner turns the key in the beginning, but he doesn't. The monkey's hand is already up. And so I thought that was, we talked about in the book how the monkey just chooses when to bang the cymbals. And I thought it was well done here where someone has to turn the key, but the monkey can also just choose, like, I'm just going to keep my arm up and I'll decide when I want it to go off again.
Yeah, and he does that at the end too with the drum roll. Like, I think that's an unmotivated roll, like a thing that happens. So I think the monkey can just choose to do it.
So you have Adam Scott, trying to get rid of this monkey, and also the reoccurring line when they're like, it's not a toy, don't call it a toy. And then as he is trying to get rid of it, we hear Hal in voiceover. I wrote it down since I had the theater to myself. Not every parent passes some secret horror onto their kids, but mine did. And so I thought that was a great intro into the theme of generational trauma and how the trauma your parents pass on to you in one way or another. And we get that with Hal and Bill, but also we get that with Petey. And then we get that with, I don't know the character's name, but the one who has a cop for a dad. He was also abandoned by his father. And so all of these parents that are passing on this, secret horror, however he phrased it.
And that feels very Stephen King, right? Like, every character seems to come from an abusive household. Like, that's so frequent in King's work. I do like that Osgood Perkins looked at that and was like, I feel like there's a lot of movies, a lot of stories out there about generational trauma. It's a story that, and it will continue to be something that people will talk about a lot because it's, I think, sort of a essential part of a human experience and the way that trauma gets passed on through generations. But I hadn't encountered a movie that dealt with it in such a fun way, right? Like such a just ridiculous way, and like just sort of laughing in the face of death, in the face of this evil. It's quite effective. I don't know. I like that.
And I do want to note, like, while trauma is absolutely passed down, I like that Tatiana Maslany is also passing on like a lesson of living life and enjoying life and finding ways to navigate that absurdity. So it's like, yeah, you're catching a lot of this trauma, but also like there's some life lessons in here that may make your life better. We were talking about the monkey already, so I wanted to note the change from the cymbals to the drum. From what I could see, Osgood Perkins changed it because there was a cymbal banging monkey in Toy Story 3. that apparently Disney has rights to or something like that in
Whoa.
movies.
Interesting.
That's so random. They like trademarked it because it was in a pretty small scene in Toy Story, right? So it's like, why were they going to make a spin-off of it or something? I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe.
I'm shocked that they could even copyright that.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
could trademark that, honestly. But
It's a thing that's been around a long time, obviously. I want to say I thought it worked really well, though. I mean, we also get the drum roll sequence, which worked, but there's something ominous about drums, like a funeral march. Like there's something that's sort of appropriate and I don't know, percussion in that way, that sort of like deep percussive sound. And I like the spin of the stick too, this little pizzazz I'm gonna put on it before I viciously murder somebody.
yeah. Do you guys have a favorite? Just jumping around, do you have a favorite death in the whole movie?
I mean, the one that like got to me the most the first time was the wasps, just because
Yeah.
that one was like the most disgusting.
It is very silly though.
It is, yeah.
They rocket into that mouth at a just unbelievable speed. But it is very gross the way they like tear out of his face and everything. That was definitely disturbing. I would have said my favorite was the realtor, just because I love that character so much, and
she was
how
so good.
unexpected it is. So funny, and it leads to a really funny moment with the finger in the mouth and everything. But she was hilarious. I don't know. She was another like just a little momentary character that stole the show for a little bit.
I love that Theo James, like his character Hal, ends up in so many scenarios where he's just getting like covered in buckets of blood and stuff from like, you know, whether it's the shotgun going off or the exploding body and all this stuff.
What was your favorite, James?
He's in a constant state of just like trying to get blood off of him and keep his wardrobe clean. I think my favorite has to be, I would say it's my favorite because it was the funniest to me. It's the stamp, like the trampling sequence with like specifically the line that Laura talked about already. With it looked like somebody drop kicked a cherry pie or whatever when they opened up
when all the horses trampled him out in the it was like 100 wild horses or something.
So ridiculous, and also the cut to
him opening the sleeping bag is so funny.
Well, no, the cut from him saying like "I'll be there for you" or something. He says something to him, and then cut to his funeral picture.
Yeah, he had a lot of fun killing himself in this movie. Also, his conversation he had with the kid was hilarious. Yeah. I don't know, it's so funny. That got genuine laughs out of me in the theater for sure.
He's like we're swingers, and
he's like I never wanted to have kids. I wanted to just be able to sit down and not have to get up again until I want to, or something like that. And he's just sitting there telling this kid, "I don't want you."
Well, and he's like, "We're gonna do the best we can, but our best might not be very good."
Yeah, not very good.
I think another one of my favorites would have to be the hibachi, specifically because like I thought you were just gonna get the blood spurting out of the neck, but the head falling off and then landing on the grill is so crazy. And then when the joke that they make when they're at the funeral and they're like open casket or whatever, and they're asking like how she's not like burned basically.
Yeah, how did they get that back on or into one piece or something?
Yeah, and the mom is like, don't think about it.
Yeah, don't think about it. And just her reaction to the preacher, that was the other reason I liked the preacher, was the reaction she kept giving him was so funny. And he points at her and he's like, "It could be you," and she's like,
what the fuck?
Yeah, what the fuck?
Genuinely was sad to see her go from the aneurysm. That was pretty fucked.
Yeah, definitely the saddest death.
I would say so.
I mean, we love her at that point. She's such a great character. And like she's so identifiable, and like the way that she's clearly trying, she's making dinner for her kids, and yet just kind of like the nature of trying to be a single parent and not being able to be there for everything. Like she just doesn't even know what's going on, right? Like he's comes home covered in bananas and like has been picked on, and she never finds out because he doesn't tell her. He goes to his room immediately. She doesn't see it, and instead it's like an argument because he's like not respecting the fact that she's making dinner for him, right? So it's like such a identifiable, like relatable moment, I think.
Another fun character moment that just is so brief and I thought was going to be a bigger one was Elijah Wood's character.
Oh my god, I can't believe we've taken this long to talk about Elijah Wood.
I know, and he plays this like it's like this like intellectual like enlightened
an expert
kind
on
of
fatherhood.
like fucking asshole. Like he doesn't have a kid.
I'm feeling the parental energy from you two. Right?
He stole it.
He's
he
like,
stole
and
the
I stole your
parental
energy.
So good. He seems like the nicest guy, so for him to play that role is hilarious.
We're gonna have to
that was
arm
so
wrestle.
random.
I would say I think Elijah Wood would lose that arm wrestling match. Three of us pretty jacked.
Yeah.
I did want to say though, when they're talking about Petey, they're like, he's starting to ask more questions and he's doing a family tree. It sounds like he's young, and then he walks in and it's a teenager, and you're like, what high schooler is making a family tree?
Yeah.
Great point.
I don't know if it
Yeah.
was intentionally
He
supposed
is
to
a
be
little older
funny,
than I
but
expected. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. A few things that I'll note as changes, just so that we can get those out of the way and like really dig into our favorite scenes. Hal and Bill are not twins in the short story. Younger, older brother dynamic. Hal is a married father of two, Dennis and Petey, which we talked about. And then many of the deaths are obviously different.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted the monkey to kill Bill, and it ended up killing the mother. And so Bill and Hal are dealing with the trauma of losing their mother because of the monkey. And then Bill obviously like creates like a, I don't know, fascination with the monkey. He realizes what Hal has done, and then continues. He like kind of seeks it out, and eventually is like a villain that's trying to use this
Such an
monkey
over
to
the
kill
top like lair
Hal.
with all these TVs stacked on each other, and he's got this shrine to it. And all this
Evil
stuff.
lair and everything. Yeah,
Bill is like a character, like he's mentioned. Even as adults, like it says that he's there at the funeral. But yeah, obviously their dynamic is very different from book to movie. And yet the movie, Hal and Bill are more like Dennis and Petey from the book, with like the one bullying the other. And
Agreed. Yeah, it really felt like that he wanted to have that brother relationship be front and center. It pulled some stuff from the story, but obviously kind of reimagined it and brought in his own spin on it. But it keeps family at the heart of this, which feels appropriate. It did feel a little bit to me, some of this like message about the passing on of trauma, and resisting it and like scoring a minor victory over it, was perhaps intentionally changed, but if not, it was kind of lost with this version. This feels a lot more about the randomness of death, than it being. I don't know. There's lines where he talks about it being an evil that's passed on, and Hal seems to think of it that way. But also it really seems to just be kind of random.
I did think, like Hal, so the way he's dealing with this, this grief and this pain and his father who wasn't there for him. And so the way he's dealing with it is to try to stop, like not confront it and hope that it just doesn't happen. And he has to isolate himself. And he's this bad influence and he just can't stop the influence. And so it's better to just be alone. And it ends up hurting his son that he doesn't have a relationship with him. But in his mind, he's like, well, you're better off this way. When really he's not. Like the son needs a relationship with his dad. But yeah, and so maybe he was taking more of a cue from his dad, which we don't know. Did the dad die? Did he just leave?
Yeah. Oh, that does remind me that I wanted to know a little more about their relationship. I kind of wanted to have another scene with him.
Yeah.
Like, interacting with the kids in some way. I don't know. It did make his absence stand out that we never saw him again. We never see them in a scene together at all.
Or the mom says like, oh, he went out for cigarettes and never came back. So I guess he is still alive out there.
Which
but
is
yeah,
such
so
a
Hal
cliche way for that to happen. But
yeah. But Hal is taking a cue from his dad, being like, I don't want to confront this and change it or try to control it. And so instead he just avoids it. But then by the end, he is more inspired by his mom, where it's just like, you know what? I can't change the fact that death happens, but I can change, how I handle it and how I choose to be in this world. And so also, we can talk about the guy on the pale horse in the end too, but how he makes eye contact with him and is like finally confronting death and bad things and hard things.
Yeah. Let's talk about that because you brought it up. How does everybody feel about that moment? I'll just sort of tip my hand a little bit and say that for me, this is one that I don't know how well it worked. It felt a little over the top, but I don't know. I could see people liking it. I'm curious to know how it played for both of you, especially seeing it twice now, Laura.
I thought it worked. Yeah, there's like a number of things where maybe it's very on the nose. And throughout the movie, there's multiple mentions like, oh, a pale horse and on it rode death. And so that's what I assumed that was representing. It's this town, everybody is dying. So here is death walking through. But then him like looking at it and them both acknowledging each other, I took that as him, acknowledging and confronting the bad things that happen in life and not running away from it or, and also the fact that they keep the monkey because Petey is like, oh, what are we going to do with it now? And he's like, we're going to keep it and make sure no one messes with it. So instead of passing it on, being like, this is your problem now, he's like, no, like I'm going to keep it and it'll keep you safe by me just not passing it on to someone else. And so I think it worked for me.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was like, left to be pretty interpretive. And I felt like it was almost, my first initial thought was that it was a spirit of the monkey, like whoever has been like kind of inhabiting the monkey, and like whether the monkey represents death or if that is death on a horse coming by or whatever, the monkey is associated with it in some way. And so like I almost saw it as like a nod to, now you are death because you have this monkey and it's in your possession, and it's kind of you have like overcome the obstacles that most people do, which is the fascination to turn it and to try to get rid of it and to try to avoid it. And I think in like stopping that resistance, he's like kind of achieved something that not many have. But yeah, I don't know. I think it works well enough for me, and it didn't like feel like jumping the shark or anything at the end of the movie.
I was gonna say it felt like it was a deliberately jumping the shark moment, but if you're gonna jump the shark, it's smart to do it right at the end of the movie. If this had occurred at like the 3/4 mark or something, it would have been hard to come back from, I think. But since it's right at the very end, I guess it does work. I think you're all right on exactly on what that scene should mean and does mean. But yeah, just for my taste, it was a little, I don't know, a little too direct. Like we're taking the metaphor and we're making it literal. We're seeing the actual pale horse ride in, and we're changing a look. To my tastes, I don't know, maybe a little bit too much. But yeah, to each their own. And this movie is all about too much, so maybe it is in line with sort of the vibe of the movie overall.
It is crazy in the movie, just to talk about Hal a little more. He's so familiar with death, and he never whenever I watch his character, when somebody's about to die, he's never afraid for himself. He just knows somebody near him is about to explode or be consumed or by wasps or whatever. And like it's like seeing his reactions. I think Theo James did a great job of reacting.
Yeah, what a voice, by the way. Great narration voice.
Oh yeah, when it was revealed to be him, I was like, that's not the voice he's using when he's acting in the film. It's like his more gravitas, narrator voice.
He should be an audiobook narrator if he's not already, because that's an excellent voice.
That was one complaint I had. So it was specifically in the first part when they're kids. A couple times in that part, the narration was so obvious and unnecessary. And that was when he's like, that's the way the monkey works, and it doesn't take requests. And it's like, yeah, we know. Or when they throw it down the well, being like, and we threw it down the well to get rid of it. It's like, yeah, we know.
Yeah. So this movie is not trying to be super subtle, though. I think we've established that it's very, it's willing to just kind of say things plainly.
That's true.
But I agree. For me, like I prefer a little more subtlety. But
yeah. But then when we get that moment where he realizes that Bill is in town, and then we switch and we get Bill's, narration. But I loved his part where he's not talking to the audience. It's like it almost sounded poetic in a way where he's talking to the monkey. Like, I went down to look for you and you weren't there. And then I found, whatever. And so I loved his narration.
That also touches on something we didn't mention from the story. And it's unclear whether or not he's actually talking with the monkey or if he's imagining a voice coming from the monkey. It's ambiguous, but there is lines from the monkey talking to Hal in the short story.
Oh, yeah.
Like taunting him, saying like, maybe you'll be next, like who am I clapping these cymbals for? Who knows? But it was also unclear whether or not he's just imagining that or if that is really something that the monkey was saying. We don't get any voice of the monkey in the movie though. So I guess a change.
The way Bill is grabbed by it though, in a sense, is kind of similar to that aspect.
Giant monkey hand comes down, scoops him up. That was such a fun moment.
Yeah, I did notice too, like the monkey in the film does communicate with him in a few, or at least with characters in a few interesting ways, specifically just to say hi and I'm back, basically, to Bill at one point in the fortune cookie. And then the one that I didn't even pick up until I was reading through, literature about the movie, is people have interpreted the air conditioning being on high at one point being like a hello to, that's the hello from the monkey to Hal saying I'm back, basically.
When it's on high, when he wakes up.
It's on high and he lowers it. Yeah. And I was like, damn, that's fucking clever. That's really cool.
Okay, I like that.
The entire town goes to shit. Yeah. Like, I didn't expect the monkey to do a drum roll and kill like everyone in town. Yeah. And I was like, is Petey's mother going to be dead now? Like, how, like, you know what I mean? The ramifications of that are like so wild. And then, yeah, but ultimately for them to just be accepting of this in that moment and kind of just like taking it for what it is.
One part that reminds me that I do want to talk about happens right at the end there is the way that Bill dies. He gets killed by this cannonball, or it's like a bowling ball, but it specifically says Lois on it.
It's the one that he was going to use to kill him earlier in the movie.
The one he was going to use to kill him earlier in the movie. So you could almost say that it's like finally it does come around and does kill the brother. I don't know I feel like there is something maybe a little more going on. Very gross moment with the way that the head was smooshed out to either side and the eyes were on either side of it and everything. It was pretty gross. But yeah, what did you think of it being the lowest ball in particular that kills Bill?
I mean, I just thought about the very beginning when he's fantasizing about killing Bill with a bowling ball. As far as like, I don't know if it's implying that Lois I don't think she would be causing Bill to die. So
Right.
I don't think Lois as a spirit had anything to do with it, but yeah, I guess I'm not quite sure what they were going for with having it, if it was just connected to the beginning.
I also wasn't. That's why I asked, because I'm like,
Yeah.
I couldn't quite figure out what that was supposed to mean. Yeah. Other than just being a reference to the original. Maybe that's all it is.
I think that you could dig into that, but ultimately I felt the same way. I think it was just like kind of a full circle moment of that coming around. And specifically after Bill has come around and they've like reconciled, and like in that moment he's killed by the lowest ball. So it's like something that Hal actually didn't want to happen at that point. So maybe that's the effect of it there.
It's like his grief around Lois ultimately has ruined his life and caused him to do all this crazy stuff. And then now it does come back to bite him and kill him in the end.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it too. Which I did want to talk about Bill. First of all, he actually saw the mom die, which would be incredibly traumatic. And then the part when he's still a kid, like how he doesn't want to accept death, and how even when his mom dies, he stands up and he's trying to be like, we get the joke, you can wake up now. And so then as he went into adulthood, like his way of not dealing with grief or dealing with it in an unhealthy way is trying to control it by like getting the monkey and now being like, okay, well now, I can control who dies, which means, I won't be hurt again because now I'm in control of it, when really you can never be in control of it. Maybe it's like the illusion of control in some ways, but and then also how his grief made him very self-centered, because in the end, Hal is like, she was my mom too. And he's like, that's true. I never thought about that.
Yeah, which I thought was kind of played for laughs.
Right? Yeah.
He's like, I guess you are my twin brother.
Yeah.
I guess it was your mom. It's like, yeah, come on, man.
Also, I loved his suit with like the flames.
Oh my God.
I don't know why it was that way, but it was funny.
Yeah. Well, we see when he's a kid, he has a shirt with flames. And so he gets the shirt and he gets the suit. But yeah, I loved him as Bill. I thought he was great, but also like how he treats the monkey like some kind of deity. And before he turns the key, he's praying, being like, in your infinite wisdom, you'll take the person who I know is right. And of course, in his head, he's thinking Hal. And I say this, I believe in God, but obviously you can pray and oftentimes not get what you want. And so seeing that with the monkey where he's praying over and over again, trying to get it to kill Hal, and it just won't. And so in the end, he's trying to force that by like trying to move the paws on its own. And
it sets us a really funny death with the people coming through the ceiling, because they had set it up earlier by seeing the flyer of the skydiving, and it's like one after another, and then the bride. Like, I don't know.
I totally missed that the first time. I did not understand why a bride fell through.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the second time I got that.
Well, one of the things that you're talking about, Laura, that I love about the monkey too, like we've already talked about the monkey's paw and like be careful what you wish for and all that. But one of the most clever things was like on the container when he says like life, it specifically says like life. And then, his brother corrects him. He's like, no, life like, not like life. And it actually is like life. And like, so throughout, like we're meant to think of the monkey as like life, and whether that's with the death or how you can't pray to something and you might not get what you're asking for. All of those different things are represented within that. Really, I just think that's so clever. That section on the box there.
Yeah.
All right, are we ready to come down with our final judgments?
I think we need to make like eggs and scramble on over to our to our deliberations here. So we like to choose at the end of projects whether we like the book or the film more. We'll let Luke start, and then Laura, you'll be our tiebreaker
potentially
if it comes to that.
Yeah, I went into this movie thinking I was definitely going to take the movie because it's as far as like stories go from King, I wouldn't rate this one particularly high. And the movie's fun. I think I am still taking it, but it ended up being closer than I would have originally thought, because there was a lot of depth there in that story, especially talking about it with you two and thinking about it more. There's a lot going for that story. But yeah, I think overall, I'm going to give it to the film. It's going to be the thing I remember more. It's going to be the thing that ultimately I think I would recommend more to people, whereas I don't know that I'm going to go out and recommend that particular story by King over like a lot of the other stuff that he has that I think is a lot more memorable and moving. So yeah, I'll give it to the film here.
I'm also going to take the film. It's mostly because of that through line of just like living your life. Everybody dies, and that's life, and that messaging that came through after the roller coaster ride that I went through. And again, I'm going to give it credit for the fact that it did give me that unique experience, like that novel experience that I haven't seen a movie like this. Like it's playing in a horror comedy space. It's playing in like a meta space of all horror in general. And it's just absolutely absurd. And I like seeing people just fucking make fun stuff. And I guarantee you this was fun to make. It was fun to watch. I like King a lot. Well documented on the podcast, but for this, and again, this isn't even my favorite Osgood Perkins film.
No, it's not mine either, and I haven't seen all of them. But yeah, I like Longlegs better than this, I would say. But
yeah, but I liked it enough to where this is going to be my pick.
Yeah, I'll just go ahead and say that I would choose the movie as well. And again, I liked it well enough the first time, but I feel like the second watch is what really cemented it. As it's not like a 5 out of 5 star movie, but yeah, I love what Perkins did with the story, and I think he kind of took some of the more interesting parts of the book and just highlighted it even more, and the absurdity of it I think works really well, and especially again as Perkins being someone who has dealt with grief in a variety of ways through the last couple decades that he's been dealing with it, and just arriving at a place where maybe not taking life so seriously and just dance. And so, yeah, I liked what he did with it. And I would definitely watch it again. Whereas the short story, I don't see myself ever returning to that.
All right. I think it's unanimous then. We like the movie better in this occasion. Laura, would you share with people who might be watching you for the first time what your YouTube channel is and where they can find you, and maybe like some other adaptations you've either covered recently or maybe have coming up?
So Why the Book Wins, I do book versus movie comparisons. Every now and then I'll branch out. For example, I saw Baby Girl and absolutely loved it, but it is not based on a book. So I just did a random video sharing why I loved it.
That's cool.
But primarily I do book versus movie comparisons, and like I said, I did The Stand in January. And then one I have coming up that I'm kind of excited to be released is my one for Naked Lunch, because that was insane. And it was not a great experience, but it was an experience that was interesting to talk about. So yeah, I try to release a video every Monday. And then I have Instagram. Instagram is where I'm the most active. So that's the best place to follow me on social media. And then I also will post on my community tab on YouTube as well. So YouTube and Instagram are the two best places.
Definitely check out her channel. I saw that you are nearing 20,000 subscribers. Congratulations. So help her get over that hump. That's an amazing growth for your channel.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's always a joy to talk to you. We will probably be doing something with you over on your channel.
Yes.
So fans of ours, if you want to make sure to subscribe even just for that, so that you'll make sure you catch whatever video we end up making with you next.
Yeah, I look forward to that. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for joining us. So if you enjoyed this episode on The Monkey, let us know in the form of a rating and review on whatever app you chose to listen on. And if you're on YouTube, make sure to weigh in the comments, subscribe to our channel, like the video, all the good stuff. It does genuinely help our podcast grow, helps us get into the eyes of more people out there, the eyes and ears, I should say.
And be sure to connect with us on social media. We're on Facebook, Blue Sky, Instagram. We also have a Discord server. All of those are at Ink2Film. If you'd like to join the Discord server, email us at ink2film@gmail.com or just send us a message on any of those platforms.
Yeah, and we'll send you a link. For some reason, when I said that, I imagined our content flying like wasps into someone's mouth. I don't know why that came into my head, but
I mean, that is how people typically.
That's how it goes. Yeah,
they usually put their headphones in their mouth.
We have a lot of content too, so yeah, it would be a lot if you tried to consume it all at once. So we also have a Patreon, patreon.com/ink2film. That's where we release bonus content every month. We put out another episode. That's also how people can vote on upcoming projects. So if you'd like to affect what we cover in the future, you're going to want to be on Patreon, and we'd love to have you over there.
And thank you to Russ Bugden for the use of our intro and outro music.
All right, and all that's left to do is to announce what we're doing next. And that's going to be The Wheel of Time, which is, a show that we've covered 2 seasons of now. We've read several books. This next season is going to be a big one. From what we've heard, it's going to cover 2 different books, which are already quite meaty. But we're going to try and tackle it just because we love epic fantasy, and it's a big show right now. And I went to Dragonsteel last year, so I want to stay up with it. And Wheel of Time means a lot to me. It was one of my series growing up. So we're going to get into it with The Dragon Reborn. We're going to do the entire book. But we are going to have like an off week, I think, in there where you'll see something from the vault come out. But then after that, we'll be back with The Dragon Reborn. And
then we're going to be following that up with Shadow Rising and the show as well. Yeah. So it's going to be a fun triumvirate. I mean, epic fantasy is like what got me into reading fantasy in general. And then you just continuing to read these. This is a series that I've specifically been putting off for years and years now, just for the podcast. Yeah. So just for you guys. But otherwise, I'm so excited to jump back into this.
All right. So we hope you join us for that. And until next time,
keep adapting.